This candy-coated confection is my way of thanking Feh for being such a dedicated worker. Flit-flot, flit-flot, flit-flot.
Hey there everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing some cooking with KCB. And since I saw Babish at the book signing last month, we're going to do an homage to binging with Babish. First thing you're going to want to do, preheat that oven to 350. And then of course get your cupcake pan because we are going to be recreating the Feh Cupcake from the 3rd anniversary Feh Channel. This is the most difficult part, I assure you. Just getting these out and getting them into the pan. It takes a minute. I don't know why they don't put separators in the paper ones, but they're equally as hard to get out as the foil ones. I don't care what anybody tells me. Once you're done, take your extras, give them a toss. We don't need them. Next, we are actually going to be prepping some ingredients. So you're going to be needing about 3/4 cup of milk, and trust me, that is apple cider vinegar. Do not smell it. It smells terrible. But go ahead and add it to the milk, give it a little whisk. And after that, we are going to be letting it set for about 5 minutes. No more, no less. Just 5. Just kidding, it's actually more. It took me a while. Next, get a bowl. Sturdy bowl, rubber bottom, doesn't move. You're going to be adding your dry ingredients, like the 1 1/4 cup gluten-free flour, 1/4 cup cornstarch, 1 1/2 teaspoons of baking powder, 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Just mixing them all together. But if you're like me, you put all the wrong ingredients in the wrong bowl, and you always want to put your dry ingredients in the oh no. Oh, okay. So once you go ahead and mess that up and get all the dry ingredients in the smaller bowl, go ahead and start adding the butter that you have to the big bowl, because you always want to mix your dry ingredients into your wet ingredients. It's just a law. Go ahead and add your sugar. That's about 1 cup to 8 tablespoons butter, and start mixing it by hand because you stubbornly refuse to use the stand mixer that your in-laws gave you for Christmas, Brian. And after you do away with all those nagging thoughts of your wife, you continue mixing by hand because, again, you are far too stubborn to use the mechanical gift that makes your life a lot easier. And we're still mixing. There we go. And now it's time for some vanilla, because what goes better with vanilla and sugar than butter? And of course, the eggs. Now for this, what you're going to need is 1 whole egg and then 2 egg yolks. No more, no less. How you get the egg yolk, you may be wondering. All you have to do is kind of just shuffle it between the 2 shells, knocking out the white, and eventually you will just have a yolk. Pop it in. The second time is going to be a little more easy, and you can actually see the egg yolk. Perfect. This is, of course, a gluten-free recipe because I can't eat wheat, because sometimes you get a bad hand in life. Now you're going to start adding that milk that you added the cider vinegar to, a little at a time, mixing ever daintily. Adding your dry ingredients, adding your wet ingredients, mixing back and forth. It's how the world works. You don't want to add too many at once, otherwise it's going to be very difficult to mix, which may actually not be an issue with a stand mixer, but again, I wouldn't know that. Continue mixing, and hey, guess what? Keep mixing. But hey, we're almost there, right? So I mean, that's a plus. Stand mixer definitely wouldn't have made this easier. I'm just kidding, it absolutely would have made it a lot easier. And once you've got a slightly thicker pancake batter type consistency, you are good to start popping in your cupcakes. Now, there is no real trick to this necessarily, but the standard recipe that we have here does make 12 cupcakes. So what I did was I just started to fill them in as evenly as possible with 1 spoonful, and then with whatever was left, I went in to try and even up the cups. There we go. Pop them in, and they're going to sit there for about 20-ish minutes, which gives us plenty of time to start making buttercream. And yes, I did check on my phone. Buttercream has 3 very simple ingredients: butter, cream, sugar. Buttercream frosting. It's pretty simple. Can't really mess it up. And now we actually do need a stand mixer, so despite my better judgment, we're going to use this guy. Great. The difference here is you can't actually get a hand-whipped buttercream consistency that we need for this. So go ahead and add all of your butter, literally 16 tablespoons of butter. It's a lot of butter. And then start gently whipping it until you get to a higher speed and pop it open. Reassess. After the first couple minutes, you're going to notice that it's still kind of yellow, but we don't want that. We want a very pale, almost white type color, and that is going to happen once enough air gets into the butter, and you can see it's getting a lot thicker. That's exactly what we want. Once we hit this kind of consistency, we're on the right track. But again, it's not just butter. Actually, if you want whipped butter, this is a great way to do it, because whipped butter is actually pretty darn delicious. Scrape down the sides to make sure we're not missing anything. Butter is, after all, 1/3 the total ingredient in buttercream frosting. Whip it back up again, and this time we are getting closer to that pale white consistency, so it's time to start adding some sugar. I have a little strainer here that we're putting the sugar into, because as you'll see in a minute, after we sift it through, we're going to be getting some clumps that made their way not into our frosting. You don't want that. Nobody wants clumpy frosting. That's just a terrible thing. Start mixing. Add your milk, little at a time, not to overwhelm, and then just keep repeating the process until all of your sugar and milk are gone and you have a nice kind of consistency within the buttercream frosting. Now, some people may want to add vanilla to this if you were adding chocolate. Now would be a good time to add some cocoa powder, but we're not doing that because, as best of my knowledge, the frosting was vanilla in the original cupcake. Speaking of which, it's time to take those out of the oven. Do not let them burn. That's a bad time. If they pass the toothpick test, then we are good to go. And we are. Hey, look at that. Frosting. And it tastes just like frosting. Great. It's very sticky like frosting too. It's habits of there we go. Hey, look, we're mixing, but be sure not to knock out too much of the air. Otherwise, you get a deflated frosting, and nobody likes that. Everybody likes a light, whipped kind of frosting. Now that that's happening and our cupcakes are cooling, it's time to recreate the owl. And what better way to do that than with marzipan? Now, the only problem here is, of course, this contains wheat, and well, the only other option was this or Play-Doh, and since Play-Doh is, well, is Play-Doh edible? Technically, Play-Doh is non-toxic, so I guess you could eat it, but I don't recommend it. Just use this instead. Hey, look at that. We got food coloring because the owl is more than one color. This is actually a pretty easy process. It's just kind of working with clay or Play-Doh or silly putty, really, any kind of oddball mixture that you might come up with, but getting it out of the foil is actually kind of difficult. I didn't anticipate this much struggle, but as you'll find out, it's basically just almond paste. So almond paste and flour is pretty sticky, as you can see. And it's just a lump of dough stuff, which I can't eat. Yep, smells like almonds. That must be it. Hey, we're gonna make the Feh body now. That means we're just rolling up a ball of marzipan and then pinching two sides to eventually form ears, as you can see there. And after that, it's time to kind of start peeling off some pieces, getting the right sizes, and eventually we're going to start working in some color. But first, we might as well pop some wings on because that food coloring is going to stain our hands immensely. It's not going to be pleasant, but you know, art takes sacrifice. So after we get the wings popped on, everything is going to start looking kind of owl-shaped, hopefully. I'm really channeling my inner second grader art skills here. Yep, that's an owl. Seems like an owl. But no owl is complete without the proper amenities. And of course, our Feh here, well, technically it's Fehnix. There's a bow, so it's Fehnix. We're making a Fehnix here. We're going to be adding some red to try and make a bow tie, because what Fehnix marzipan recreation is incomplete without a bow tie. All of them. They are all incomplete without bow ties. We must have bow ties at all times. And they must be red. Which again, is going to stain our fingers pretty badly. As you can see. I was not just hanging out in the berry patch. I promise you I was mixing a lot of marzipan. And it was very red. Once we've got that figured out by adding a little bit of yellow, because these plant-based food dyes are not perfect, we are going to start shaping our bow by pinching two sides, leaving a slight square in the center, and then rounding them out by pressing them down. That'll make a slight-ish bow tie shape, and luckily we don't need anything to attach these, because it's very sticky. Did I mention marzipan is really sticky? It's basically almond paste and flour. That's all it really is. That's genuinely all it is. We're mixing some yellow now because we have several yellow things to make, namely the hat and the beak, because, you know, owls need beaks and it's a party, so we gotta make a party hat, right? I'm just going by the picture. I have nothing else to do. So after we get the beak attached there, it's gonna start looking kind of animal-like. Perfect. Now it's time to start adding some details like the party hat, which is basically just a yellow cone and some purpley-ish stripage, I guess. Stripage a word? We're gonna say it's a word. So after you get the hat formed, it looks kind of like a cone. Perfect. Channeling geography from middle school. Roll out a little bit of purple. If you didn't know, blue and red make purple. Makes it pretty easy. And then starting at the base, we're just going to kind of swirl it around the cone and try not to make it look really bad. It's pretty easy. It's, as I said, it's just a stripe. So after we get that figured out, everything is pressed in. We're going to start making the star on top of the hat. And similar to how we made our owl ears, we're just going to pinch each corner 5 times and then just kind of flatten it out to make a slight-ish star shape. Yeah, that looks good. Should be proud of yourself for that, Brian. Stars aren't easy to make. Way to go, previous Brian. Way to go. So after we get that, we're going to pop the hat on there, and again, it's going to stick really well. I can't downplay how sticky this stuff actually is. Then it's pretty easy. We're just going to make some eyes because, you know, time is of the essence, and this is really just about the cupcakes, and you know, yeah, we don't need to focus too much on this. It's going to look well, like a third grader made it. Anyway, time to start frost. Hey, look at that. That is a frosting bag. Now, if you don't have a frosting bag and tips and whatnot, you can make do by cutting a corner off of a Ziploc bag and just kind of easing your way through that. But I'd tell you what kind of tip I used, but I genuinely don't remember, and you want a bigger one, and I used a smaller one. So there it is. But hey, look, we have an even cupcake. We're going to get some of the frosting out that we had, scoop it into our bag. I assure you, it is still there. Albeit a little deflated because I got a little rough with the mixing. And after we fill up our bag, it's time to shift it down, and we're going to start piping icing onto our cupcake. Now, typically you don't want to start from the outside in, you want to start from the inside out, which I did not do because frankly I was tired at this point, and well, listen, you can't blame me. All right, I'm sorry. I'm not a baker. I prefer chefery, but I tried. All right, maybe if Feh made a steak next time, I'd be in better shape. We'll hope for that for year 4. Yeah, Fehnix steaks, it could happen. Anyway, you're gonna pipe it in. You're gonna give it a nice little plump on top for reasons that will be revealed later. And now we're going to add sprinkles because I forgot that there was a very important ingredient that had yet to be added. So we're just gonna go with it. And we're just shaking them out because sprinkles are kind of hard to get out of round holes when they are kind of pill-shaped. Oops. Oh well. We made a mess, but it looks great. Now you're going to frantically go into your cupboard, find any kind of chocolate you can, add it to a bowl, throw some butter in there, and then maybe add a little splash of milk just to make some kind of weird chocolate ganache thing because I forgot that there was a syrup looking thing on the cupcake. And look at that. we have a chocolate syrup. It does taste like chocolate syrup too. Don't just take my word for it. So we're going to drizzle that on there. And once we get the majority of that on there and looking good, we're actually going to have to put more sprinkles on, much to my dismay. Because again, they're not easy to put on. But, you know, we can't recreate the Fehnix cupcake without chocolate sauce. So I, for one, have never put chocolate sauce on a cupcake, but that's just me. Anyway, berry time. There are berries on this cupcake. 2 blueberry and 1 raspberry. No more, no less. Pop them in the side there, right around that peak that we made with our icing to kind of help cradle them in the side. That is going to be the purpose for why they are there. And then we're going to completely ignore that purpose and smash a giant marzipan Fehnix on top. But it looks terrible, so let's recreate something that I can actually eat and something that's a bit more pleasing to the eye. We're going to pipe more icing onto a cupcake, drizzle some more chocolate sauce, and then erratically throw sprinkles at the cupcake, and then get more creative by just opening the bottle and throwing some stuff on there. Perfect. Pop 2 berries on there, followed by a raspberry, and you have the Fehnix cupcake recreated. But it wouldn't be over unless we actually had a taste test, so let's go ahead and unwrap and eat it. And I gotta be honest, gluten-free baking is not the easiest thing in the world, but this cake actually came out like a denser version of angel food, which I didn't necessarily dislike. In fact, I'm gonna go ahead and, you know, for science reasons, continue eating to make sure everything in the cupcake itself is all part of the, yep, it's all good. I'd like to thank you guys for watching this special episode of Cooking with KCB. I try and do one every year around the Feh anniversary, but if you'd like to see more, there are a lot of dishes in Fire Emblem that can be cooked, so definitely let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. Thank you again for watching, and I will catch you next time.